Cold plunges for longevity, what the science actually says. Hi, I'm Robbie Bessner, and I am the device developer and the co-founder of Therasage. You've probably seen this everywhere. People plunging into freezing cold tubs, talking about dopamine, mental clarity, fat loss, resilience. Cold exposure is becoming increasingly popular, and it's not just on social media. It's in wellness clinics, performance centers, biohacking conferences, even backyard setups are becoming more common. But with all the hype, it's actually worth asking what's actually happening when you step into the cold water, and more importantly, what's the science behind it? Cold plunges aren't new. Cultures around the world have been using cold water for recovery, vitality, spiritual discipline for centuries. What's new is the research, and some of it's pretty darn exciting. We're learning how brief, controlled cold exposure can stimulate our nervous system, support metabolic health, reduce inflammation, and possibly even improve mood and longevity. But it's not a one-size-fits-all practice. Not everyone responds the same way to cold, and there are some risks. Overdoing it, doing it too often, or jumping into extreme temperatures with underlying health issues that can cause more harm than good. There's also a lot we still don't know, especially when it comes to how cold exposure affects women differently than men, or how it interacts with other forms of stress on the body. So in this video, we're going to break it down. What the benefits are, what the limits are, and how much you actually need to get real results without pushing your body past its healthy edge. Let's talk about nervous system and mental health. One of the first things people say after a cold plunge is, I feel amazing. That sudden clarity, the alertness, and even a bit of euphoria can happen when you do this. When you get into a cold water, within seconds, your body releases a surge of norepinephrine, a hormone and a neurotransmitter tied to alertness and focus. Studies have shown that cold exposure can increase dopamine levels up to 2.5 times. And what's interesting is those levels stayed elevated for hours afterwards. So yes, cold plunges can actually help improve your mood, boost motivation, and sharpen your mind in a very real physiological way. But it's not just about chemicals. Cold plunging forces you into the present moment. Your breath shortens, your heart rate spikes, and then your breathing slows down. Your body adapts. That moment of discomfort becomes a doorway to mental resilience. It's why people say cold water helps them manage stress, anxiety, even depression. You're literally training your nervous system to stay calm under pressure and to self-regulate. It activates your sympathetic nervous system initially and quickly bounces you into parasympathetic recovery, which is where deep and calm healing takes place. That said, it's not for everyone, especially not at first. If you're already dealing with high anxiety or sensitive to nervous system stress, going too hard, too fast can leave you feeling worse. That's why we always recommend starting off slow, short sessions, controlled environments, and never pushing through panic. The goal here isn't to suffer, it's to build strength from the inside out. Now let's talk about metabolic activation and fat burning. One of the biggest reasons people get excited about cold plunges is because what it can do for metabolism and fat burning. And there's actually some solid science behind that. When your body is exposed to cold, it has to work hard to keep the core temperature stable. That process is called cold-induced thermogenesis, and it requires fuel. In that moment, your body starts breaking down fat and sugar to generate heat, especially through a special kind of fat called brown adipose tissue, or brown fat for short. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat burns it. It's packed with mitochondria, those little tiny powerhouses inside your cells, and it turns calories into heat. That's part of why babies have so much brown fat. It helps them regulate temperature. But adults have it too, mostly around their neck, spine, and upper chest. And the cold can actually activate it. And while yes, you're technically burning more calories in the cold, the real benefit isn't just about weight loss. It's about improving insulin sensitivity, boosting mitochondrial function, and training your body to use energy more efficiently. That said, It's important to note burning more calories doesn't always lead to fat loss. Some studies show people actually eat more after cold exposure to compensate. So it's not a magic bullet, but it is a powerful tool to improve how your body manages fuel, and that matters for everything from energy to longevity. Now let's talk about inflammation, immunity, and recovery. Another major benefit of cold exposure is its effect on inflammation. And that's a big deal because chronic inflammation is at the root of so many health issues. Joint pain, autoimmune conditions, even heart disease and brain fog. When you expose your body to cold, your inflammation cytokines, those molecules that fuel inflammation, start to decrease. It's your body's way of saying, okay, time to clean house. In fact, some studies have shown cold exposure can lead to significant drops in inflammation markers like TNF, alpha, and IL-6, both of which are linked to chronic illness. Cold also stimulates autophagy, the process where your body breaks down and recycles old damaged cells. Think of it like cellular spring cleaning. You get rid of what's not working so that your system runs more efficiently. And let's talk about recovery. Cold plunges are popular with athletes for a reason. They can reduce muscle soreness and speed up healing after intense workouts. Timing does matter. If you plunge right after strength training, it might actually blunt muscle growth, slowing it down. That's because cold can reduce inflammation too quickly before the body finishes adapting. So if your goal is to build muscle, it's usually best to separate your cold exposure from your workouts or save it for the rest of the days when recovery is your main priority. Now, on immune system front, there's emerging research that regular cold exposure may help boost your immune resilience. People who regularly take cold showers or cold plunges often report fewer sick days and faster bounce backs when they do get sick. The exact mechanisms are still being studied, but it's likely linked to improved circulation, lymphatic drainage, and reduced system inflammation. As always, the key is balance. Too much cold, too often, can suppress your immune function. The sweet spot is short, sharp exposures that activate your body, not overwhelm it. So let's talk about the big question. How much cold exposure do you actually need to get the benefits? The good news is, not a lot. A growing number of studies and experts suggest that just 11 minutes of cold exposure per week, broken into short sessions, about 1 to 3 minutes at a time, is all you need to trigger meaningful changes in your body. You don't need to sit in a freezing tub for 20 minutes or train like a Navy SEAL. In fact, you shouldn't. The benefits seem to come from the initial cold shock when your body is forced to adapt, your breath quickens, and your nervous system kicks in. That's where the stimulus happens. Staying in too long doesn't necessarily add more benefit, and in some cases, it could even backfire. Because as powerful as cold exposure is, it's not without risk. If you overdo it or you dive into extreme cold without preparation, you could experience what's called hypothermia. Your body core drops too low too fast. That's called cold water shock, a sharp rise in heart rate and blood pressure that can be dangerous, especially if you have heart issues. Frostbite or cold injuries, especially if your hands or feet aren't protected. Overstimulation of the nervous system leading to anxiety, fatigue, or immune suppression over time. And not all bodies respond the same way. For example, women tend to have more active brown fat and may feel the cold more intensely. People with low body fat or pre-existing conditions may need to approach cold therapy more cautiously. The key here is to start gradually. Even just a cold shower for 30 seconds can be a great entry point. Listen to your body and stay safe, and don't force it. Because like we always say at Therasage, wellness should feel empowering, not punishing. So let's wrap this up. Whether you're plunging into a cold tub, taking a brisk cold shower, or just stepping outside in the winter without a jacket for a minute, cold exposure can be a powerful way to support your body and mind. You don't need to chase extremes. You don't need to be perfect. The real benefit comes from consistency, from listening to your body, and from giving yourself the kind of stress that builds strength, not the kind that wears you down. If you tried cold plunges, I'd love to hear its impact on you. Drop a comment below and let's share stories. And if you're thinking about trying it, just remember, you don't need to prove anything. Just start where you are. Stay safe and trust your body. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.